Imagine a world where the shadow of homelessness stretches endlessly over America's cities. A world where sidewalks are no longer a place to walk, but a place to survive. Tents replace playgrounds. Parks become open-air shelters, and every street corner whispers stories of broken dreams. Now imagine that this isn't a distant dystopia. It's the future we're walking toward if nothing changes. The question isn't just whether the homeless crisis never ends. The question is, how close are we to making that nightmare real? Homelessness in America is not a new problem. It's a wound that's been bleeding for decades, and every year it deepens. From Los Angeles' Skid Row to the streets of Philadelphia's Kensington Avenue, entire neighborhoods are being swallowed by despair. And behind every tent is a story, a mother, a veteran, a child, each one a soul that America forgot. Tonight, more than 650,000 Americans will sleep on the streets in shelters or in cars. And those are just the ones we count. The real number may be far higher. But this isn't just about numbers. It's about lives unraveling. It's about families forced to choose between rent and food. Veterans who once fought for their country now fight for a dry place to sleep. Kids doing homework under streetlights because their family lives in a car. When we talk about homelessness, we often imagine it as a personal failure. But the truth is harsher. The system is broken. Rent is rising faster than wages. Medical bills can destroy a lifetime of savings. And one missed paycheck can send a family into a spiral that feels impossible to escape. Meet Lisa. She's 28, a single mother of 2. Once, she had a steady job at a hotel, a modest apartment, and a dream of going back to school. Then COVID hit. She lost her job, her savings, and eventually her apartment. For months, she and her kids lived in their car, driving around at night to stay safe. Lisa's daughter, Mia, is only 7, but she's already learned how to sleep through the sound of sirens. Her son, Jaden, clutches a toy truck, a gift from a stranger at a gas station. Lisa keeps smiling for her kids, but every night, she cries silently in the driver's seat. This isn't rare. Families like Lisa's make up 30% of America's homeless population. That's hundreds of thousands of children growing up without stability, learning to survive before they ever get to dream. Homelessness isn't just about losing a home. It's about losing identity. It's about being treated like you're invisible, like your existence is a problem to be cleaned up rather than a life to be saved. Studies show that people experiencing homelessness are 3 times more likely to suffer from mental illness and 9 times more likely to die from preventable causes. Addiction is often blamed, but in reality, homelessness itself creates cycles of trauma that are nearly impossible to escape without help. Imagine being so tired that you can't remember the last time you felt safe. Imagine carrying your life in a backpack, never knowing if your few possessions will be there when you return. Imagine being called lazy when you've walked 10 miles just looking for food and a safe place to rest. Once you're homeless, the world starts to close in. Employers don't want to hire someone without an address. Landlords don't rent to people with no rental history. Even shelters can be dangerous, crowded, loud, and often unsafe for women and children. So people retreat into tents under bridges and into abandoned buildings. The streets become a trap, and society stops seeing them as human. We step over bodies on sidewalks and call it normal. We scroll past videos of encampments on social media and barely flinch. What happens when we stop caring? What happens when this becomes our reality forever? Fast forward 20 years. Imagine walking through a city where homelessness is no longer a crisis, because it's just life. Encampments stretch for miles, police tape-lined sidewalks, and luxury skyscrapers tower over a sea of poverty. The gap between rich and poor is no longer a gap. It's a canyon. Children born into homelessness grow up believing it's normal. Schools in low-income neighborhoods close, replaced by tent schools that barely function. Hospitals overflow because people can't afford preventative care. The American dream becomes a myth told in history books. This isn't science fiction. It's the future we're creating every time we walk past someone on the street without looking them in the eye. One evening, a teenage boy named Marcus was sitting on a cold street corner in Chicago, his hoodie pulled tight against the wind. He had been homeless for a year after fleeing an abusive home. As he sat there, A woman passed by. She stopped, knelt down, and handed him a sandwich. For Marcus, that sandwich wasn't just food. It was hope. It was proof that someone saw him, that he wasn't invisible. Years later, Marcus would say that single act of kindness gave him the strength to seek help, find a shelter, and eventually earn a college scholarship. Sometimes, all it takes to change a life is one person choosing to care. Some people argue that homelessness is inevitable, that no matter what we do, there will always be people on the streets. But here's the truth. It doesn't have to be this way. Countries around the world have dramatically reduced homelessness through housing first programs, mental health services, and economic reforms. But if America chooses to ignore this crisis, the cost will be catastrophic, not just in dollars, but in humanity. Homelessness costs taxpayers billions every year in emergency services, law enforcement, and hospital care. Yet somehow, we still spend more money managing homelessness than solving it. If this crisis never ends, we won't just lose lives. We'll lose empathy. We'll lose our sense of community. We'll lose what makes us human. But it doesn't have to be this way. Across the country, there are glimmers of hope. In Houston, a Housing First initiative has reduced homelessness by over 60%. Tiny home villages are popping up in cities like Austin, giving people safe and stable places to rebuild their lives. Nonprofits and volunteers are proving that compassion is stronger than apathy. People like Sarah, a nurse who spent her weekends handing out food and medical supplies to encampments, are showing us that one person can make a difference. She says, "I don't see addicts or criminals. I see people who are hurting, people who need help." If we choose empathy over indifference, we can change the story. Picture this. A man walks into a shelter and is greeted with warmth instead of judgment. A veteran is given therapy and housing, not a ticket for loitering. A child is tucked into a bed instead of a car seat. Homelessness isn't a monster we can't defeat. It's a problem created by systems, and systems can change. But change starts with us. We can choose to look away, or we can choose to see. If the homeless crisis in America never ends, it won't just be a tragedy for the people living on the streets. It will be a tragedy for all of us, a reflection of a society that stopped caring. But the future isn't written yet. The question isn't what if it never ends? The question is, what if we decide to end it? Every act of kindness matters. Every voice matters. Every choice to help instead of ignore is a step toward a world where no one has to sleep on concrete. Because the measure of a nation isn't its wealth or power, it's how it treats its most vulnerable. So the real question is, what kind of America do we want to be?